Well, what I read about that report in terms of later, I really didn't become aware of that report until the respondent brought it up. I've never seen that report. But after becoming aware of it and reading it, I didn't find anywhere, and I think I got a translation, and it was translated in English for me. I didn't see anywhere that it mentioned in that report that there's a wetlands. So I really was befuddling about what they were talking about and relying so heavily in that report, saying that there's a wetlands, and they used that as a basis of saying that I duped Satana. Look, I didn't dupe anybody. You know, duping the federal government is a very serious crime. Deceiving a government is a very serious crime. And what I would say is this. I still think Satana is a governing, an agency that is still in business in Costa Rica. I haven't heard it close its doors. And when you make a serious charge like that, where is Satana? Where is their statement? Where is somebody, the government could go to, they work for the government. They could go to their office, Satana office, and say, look, we have evidence that David Aven duped you. We want to get a statement from you to confirm that. Isn't that what you do normally when you before you start accusing somebody of serious crimes? Go get your evidence to prove it. So at all times, I relied upon attorneys, Costa Rica attorneys. I didn't just go out there and just do things because I want to do them. We have a multi-million-dollar project. You have to be making the right moves and doing the right things and getting the right advice and getting the right legal work and getting the right professional work that you need done. And I'm not going to be doing like the Earth moving print. I didn't need it. I didn't need to get it. Nobody would know it, but I knew it, and I said, look, it's not worth doing something wrong and having problems with it. Another thing I want you to share with you is that Minor Arce testified yesterday, and I think they went in great detail about the September forestry report he done for it. I ordered that out of an abundance of caution. I wasn't required to get that. But we were starting the development in the project. We were going to be starting it, and I wanted to know, hey, what is permissible under the law with regard to what trees can be cut down, and so that's why that report commissioned that report by Minor Arce, and he told me, he says, look, any trees planted along the fence line can be cut. Any fruit trees, any planted trees, anything under 15 centimeters. And he was, I think, pretty specific with me in terms of what we could do. And this notion that we cut 400 trees down illegally is another fabricated fake news story that's been going around there. I don't remember seeing any pictures of huge amounts of 400 trees cut down. In fact, on May 15th, when the prosecutor, Mr. Martinez, come down to the project site, 2 weeks after the Inter report was gotten to us, I thought we were going down there and I thought we were going to meet Mr. Martinez, and he was going to say, look, based upon the Inter report, we can't proceed because now we got think about this, you're attorneys. We got two contradictory reports, and he's trying to make a claim about accusing me for a crime. Now we got two contradictory reports, one from INTA saying there's no wetlands, which counsel said he couldn't understand why they did that. Well, INTA's a professional. I mean, they're the professional organization. So, and then Menai report said, wetlands. How can you proceed with a criminal case against the person when you got two contradictory reports by government agencies that you asked for? I mean, it's mind-boggling. So, but what I wanted to say, I remember asking the prosecutor when he said, then he said he had a group of a team of the Menai people there, and he said, can we borrow some of your guys? We want to go stake out the wetlands. I said, what? Stake out what wetlands? Didn't you read the INTA report? And Mr. Martinez said, and it was translated, but my attorney was there, and he said, and this is what he said to me: I don't believe that report. Now, I want you to think about that statement from coming from the mouth of a criminal prosecutor. I don't believe that report. Is the law based on a belief system, or is the law based on facts and evidence? A prosecutor, one that's competent and operating the right way, that's objective evidence. You don't have an option to not believe. You have to believe it. In fact, when we talked to Esau Chavez, Manuel and I was telling him all about this, and I showed him the copy of the April 2nd Menai report that they needed before they cleared the land environmentally. And I said to him, Mr. Chavez, I said, Mr. Chavez, did you get this report? Yeah, we got that. I said, did you believe it? You know what he said? We have to believe it. We have to believe it. We have no choice. But yet, when Mr. Martinez gets a copy from a government agency that he ordered, he says he doesn't believe it. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. Now, I don't mean to belay it, but this is so interesting. So I kept saying to him, he says, he started to, you cut 400 trees. I said, where's the 400 trees we cut? Show them to me. Where are they? I kept insisting. So finally he says, he takes us to the far end of the project. We walk from the end of the project all the way to the road, which was a long way, all the way back. There was nothing there. Nothing. And it was pristine because we weren't even working back there. So I get back to the beginning where we started, and I was so frustrated. And Esteban Bermudez was with me, and Jovan, and I was mad. I says, where's the 400 trees? Where's the 400 trees you said we cut? And so him and Ms. Picardo, they got mad now. They got mad because I was calling them on where's the 400 trees. They go 50 meters into the property, and they go like this. Okay, so Esteban and I walk in, and he points to a tree. It's like this big. And I said, that's a small tree. And here's what he says to me. And to get an idea into the mentality of this guy, he says, well, if you kill a small child, isn't that murder? And I said, are you relating cutting a small tree with killing a child? He says, yes. Now, what are you going to do with this kind of thinking?
Well, I'm going to ask you a different question. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
So
everything I've read in the memorial statement, in all the witness statements, and everything in this, from what the respondent said that I've heard, is what I would call fabricated, fake stories. Like you've heard about fake news. They just create it. None of this stuff that they're saying now was in the criminal trial record.
Okay.
This is all newly created stuff. So,
He's right. I'm happy to rephrase that. What do you think of a situation in which a person is being accused? It may be encouraged or expected to make their own security arrangements?
Well, okay, it depends upon the circumstances, I think. In other words, if I'm accused, I was accused of a crime I didn't commit. Okay, so we show up at the courthouse. There's a guard at the courthouse protecting you there. I didn't have any security, I didn't expect security there in terms of, to and from there. I mean, I went there with my attorney, Javon, and everything's fine. However, once the shooting happened, that's a whole different ballgame. And I did expect that some type of security procedures to be put in place because I was almost killed. And actually, I was, we tried to get some security and we tried to get some help. And as Nestor told you, as you heard his testimony, and I went to the U.S. Embassy and, hey, look, told him what happened. And Nestor called him, and this was the time of the ambassador in Benghazi was killed along with three other people. And the embassy said, look, we can't protect you. And I took it, well, okay. I can't protect their own ambassador. Who am I? I'm a nobody. So, I'm insignificant compared to the U.S. ambassador. So I was, so to me, there's nobody to look after me except me. And I think if this happened to anyone in this room, that you would have done the same thing I did. Get out of danger. Very simply. And so I had to kind of take steps that I could take to get out of danger. And my family, they were petrified of what happened and pleaded with me to leave the country before I got killed. So, and then after I left, there was, I think Nestor testified, he tried to get additional assurances. Now, one thing I want to make note of, which hasn't been raised here, but in January of 2014, when that hearing happened, when Jovan was put on trial the second time, I was in a hospital in the States and had surgery within a week or so, virtually at the same time. And I sent letters from my doctors from the hospital. I sent them to Manuel Ventura, who was my attorney, and he forwarded them into the court. And they didn't care. They didn't care. And they put out the arrest warrant immediately. And the next thing I know, there's a Interpol report, and it was a total. So they just kept ramping it up. And after I looked at the Interpol report, which we got from the respondent, Interpol clearly told them, look, according to 83.1.1, I think, as I remember reading it, this is not a crime that rises to the level of reporting people to Interpol. It's like somebody steals a candy bar from a 7-Eleven and they don't show up for hearing, so you report them to Interpol. No, that's not what Interpol's for. They're for serious crimes. And they told them, I read it myself after Mr. Burns sent it to me. And they still insisted. They still tried to get tried to appeal to Interpol to get the red notice issued for me. It was it's mind-boggling. I mean, nobody can believe. I tell this story to people, they don't believe it. They think I'm kidding them when I tell them what happened.
What I want want you to react to is a slide that I saw in respondent's opening.
Okay,
And
which one is it?
if I could ask for this to be handed to the witness, it's not in the binder in front of you. But I want you to comment on this, please, so that the record is clear
Okay.
with your testimony. Thank you. So what we have, this was in respondent's opening remarks, and it's a chart which has 3 columns. And the first column is labeled or headed as site. And then it has EV across the top, and then construction permits. It's a simple chart. If I get this wrong, I'm sure my friend will correct me, but I take this chart to mean that the first condominium site, it says an EV was granted. Do you agree with that?
Sir,
Yeah.
you know, why can't the respondent put in dates here? Because there was EVs, a number of EVs issued by Satena. And when he was going through his chronological order that I saw, he left off a number, he left off a Satena resolution. He didn't include that. He left off the November 15th Satena resolution. He didn't include that. So without some kind of, the condominium section, unlawfully obtained, this is, yeah, I have it, yeah. I got it here.
Well, you've anticipated what was going to be my next question after I'd gotten your answer on EV, because it seemed to me that there were a whole series of documents that took place at different points in time that had expirations, that had requirements for things to be done in certain periods of time. But as you sit here today, you can't tell me without having something in front of you as to which ones were granted when and where for each one of the parts of the development?
Well, there was numerous ones, okay? And I'll tell you what I can recall.
Okay.
2004 Satena resolution, 2006 Satena resolution, 2008 Satena resolution, 2010 Satena resolution, and April 2nd, 2008 Menai clearance letter for the EV that we got in, and when I say resolution, it's an EV, okay? Because once the permit is, I call it a permit, is issued into a resolution, then at that point in time, according to Julio Eduardo, it becomes a government order that everyone is required to comply with. All public and private institutions are required to comply with. And the problem, as I said in my statement, that none of the functionaries in the Costa Rica government complied with it. And we have the testimony. You don't have to, and so, okay, David Aven saying this, don't, you know, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's, you know, but there's a guy that we got a statement from, Mr. Jorge Persenio, from the municipality, who dug deep into what was going on in Las Olas, and even went to the TAA in San Jose to do his due diligence. And this is the guy that, and you probably read his statement. And what did he say? What did he tell the government functionaries? Everything you're doing is illegal, and it even can cause civil and criminal penalties on you guys, and it could cause serious damage to the Treasury. What happened? Nobody paid attention to him. So this is not David Aven saying it. This is not George Burns saying it. This is a guy in the government saying it. If you look at Fernando Zambado's statement, and he was an ex-president, ex-housing minister. His statement, and I knew him personally, got to know him in 2006. And I was working with him when he was a housing minister to put low-income housing down into the Esterias area. What did they do? He wanted to run for president. So what do they do? They falsely charge him with a crime, just like they did with me, and he had to resign, and that killed his ability to run for president and also killed his reputation. What did he say? Here's what he said. This is a guy that was an ex-U.S. ambassador, ex-UN representative, two-time foreign minister, and was going to run for president of the country. And they did the same thing to him as they did to me. They charged him falsely with a crime. And here's what he said in his statement that I remember. This kind of criminality has to stop, because if it doesn't, it's going to really impair the ability of Costa Rica to attract foreign investment. Now, these aren't U.S. investors saying this. These are seasoned Costa Rica dignitaries and high-ranking government officials. Well, Jorge Briceño wasn't a high-ranking, but Mr. Zambado certainly was.
Same discussion with, my understanding is that the construction permits were ultimately issued by the municipality. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and to your knowledge, were construction permits obtained as required for each section of the development?
Yes, they were. Absolutely. And this nonsense about the condominium section unlawfully obtained, this is just false. This is false. Easement and other laws. What's that X mean? I don't even know what this X means. It's not explained. It says X.
I think that means the allegation is that there were no EVs.
They what?
That there were no EVs.
What? They weren't required. The EV, and look, this is not my rules. This is Costa Rica's rules. If we follow the rules, it's like, look, what is this business about? If you follow the rules and you do the things the right way, they come along and say, oh, those weren't the rules? No. I mean, the lawyers we got advice from told us what the rules were, and we followed them. And then when we follow them, they arbitrarily come along and say, oh, that's a different interpretation. That's not what it means. So I totally reject this kind of arbitrary, capricious decision-making where they can just arbitrarily, look, when governments issue valid permits, developers have to be able to rely on those permits. You can't make it a game of now you see it, now you don't. It's not a magic trick. You have to be able to rely on those. You're spending millions of dollars developing a project, and it has to be stable. You have to have a stable environment, a stable government that when you follow the rules, you pay a lot of money to get permits, they're not going to be yanked away by some rogue prosecutor that for whatever reason decides he's not going to follow the government law.
When, for the first time, did you become aware that environmental processes, in your words, could be used in order to cause previously issued permits to be canceled? Was that before or after you bought the property?
Oh, much later. Much later. We bought the property in 2000.
So none of your due diligence before buying the property had shown you that there had been the use of environmental laws in the way that you're just describing? What you knew and when you knew it about the way in which the environmental laws, you say, could be used in a capricious fashion. If you had seen examples of that prior to making your investment, that's my first question.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm glad you asked that question. It started becoming apparent to me when Mr. Martinez came on the scene in February of 2011. And I want you to understand this clearly, because when he came on the scene in 2011, something that when you see in this chronology, a couple things were happening, and there's a certain situation with respect to the project where it was. In summer of 2010, Mr. Buccellato started making complaints. He's a competitor, so he made a complaint with Satena and other agencies, but Satena. So what's Satena do? And Satena and Menai. So what do? Satena and Menai, Satena sends down an inspector to say, okay, we got a complaint. And I'm going to tell you what, Satena absolutely was the proper agency. I never had a minute's problem with them, except one time when they canceled the permit in April. But they came down and did the inspection. They issued the permit. They issued the resolution in September 1st, 2010. They rejected Buccellato's complaint. And now that resolution was another law, another government order that the functionaries and public and private people were required to comply with. Buccellato was a private person. Martinez was a public official. So they reject it, and specifically Buccellato is mentioned in that resolution. So what happens? 5 months later, Buccellato takes his complaint to Martinez, the prosecutor, according to his statement, on February 2nd, I think he says. And he started a complaint. Then 6 days later, he gets a complaint from, I think, Louis Picardo, or vice versa. I'm not sure which come first, but I think it was Buccellato made his complaint on the 2nd, and Picardo makes his complaint on the 8th. Now, think about this. Is that a coincidence that Martinez got those two complaints 6 days apart? And what did Martinez do next? The very thing he said, on the February 8th, he immediately seized the Satena files. Is that a normal reaction? Would you think somebody would call Satena, would call me, would call somebody, talk, say, what's going on here? No, he immediately seizes the files, which has to tell you something. So when he seized the files, what did he have to see? He had to see that September 1st resolution that Satena rejected Buccellato's complaint. Now, to me, a competent prosecutor, after seeing the resolution that Satena issued on September 1st, and now Buccellato is making the same complaint to the prosecutor 5 months later, would seem to me a competent prosecutor say, Mr. Buccellato, you made this complaint to Satena 5 months ago. They ruled on it. They made a determination. They rejected your wetland complaint. So I must tell you something. Do you know by law that you're required to comply with this complaint? You're a private citizen, and you are required to comply with government orders. He didn't tell him that. And he should have said, and I am required to do that too. What did he do? He takes Buccellato's complaints and runs with it. And he refuses to comply with a government order. He could have stopped it right there and then. If he would have let Satena, and Menai would have let Satena just carry out their prime directive in being the agency that was given the authority by the government and the courts as the only agency that has the power to issue these EVs, and they put the force of law behind it to make sure everybody would be required to follow it. And I said in my statement, what the government was trying to do is to stop the dysfunction that's happened in our case that's led us here. So if Mr. Martinez would have just followed the law and complied with his own law, we wouldn't be here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I don't think you were in the room, but did you witness the opening statements made in these proceedings?
Yes, I did, and I wasn't here Monday or Tuesday because I was suffering from severe migraine headaches, and maybe some of you saw I had these blue glasses on, and was prescribed by my doctor because the blue filters out the white light that triggers the migraine headache. So I wear those all the time. I'm not wearing them now because you suggested I wear these, which I appreciate. But so I took a couple, and I'm taking medication for those migraine headaches. I'm also being treated for PTSD by a doctor. The letters and evidence after the attempt of my life in Costa Rica. And basically, my life is quite different now than it was when I moved to Costa Rica because of the happenings down there and the developments, the unfortunate developments that occurred in that country. So I did hear, but when I was in my hotel room, I did see some of it, but I heard a lot of it. And I was very dismayed when I heard the counsel for the respondents, what I could call was attacked me quite viciously with respect to my engagement in duping the country, committing all kind of crimes, illegalities, and that's very hurtful, and because none of it's true, and I want to categorically reject all of those accusations, and I would like the panel to know that there's a number of investors that like buyers, okay, and they purchased nearly $2 million in lots from us, and there's another two investors that put $900,000 into the project, and because of the illegal shutdown, we are liable for that. One of the investors, I got sued by one of the investors, and I settled with him under the representation that this wasn't our fault, and therefore we are committed to returning those monies to the investors. I could have been facing 20 lawsuits right now, and I want to thank the investors and also the people that are watching live streaming it. And this is why you have to be careful with accusations you make that are false. That it went out on live stream all over the world that I'm a criminal, again, picking up the mantra that Mr. Martinez started in 2011, and continues to this very day. And I got numerous calls that day, Monday and Tuesday, from buyers, from family, from friends, saying, "What's going on? Are you a criminal?" I mean, it was so embarrassing to have to listen to those people, and a lot of them were angry that they thought I deceived them. So everybody out there that's listening to this stream, I'm categorically denying that the charges of the Respondents' Council that I engaged in any criminal activity. And I want to again confirm that it is our full intention, if we prevail, to return all the monies to the people that invested in our project, because they were collateral damage. We received the bomb, right, that went off and destroyed the project. But all those people that invested, those people that put their hard-earned money into this project, lost it as well. Nobody's talking about that, but that's a reality. And the U.S. investors are made a promise that we want to return those funds with interest. And so for everybody listening, and there's many of those U.S. investors that we gave those links to, and our friends and family that are listening to this, and we want to make that commitment that we intend to return their money, because it's not fair that they lost millions of dollars because of a project was illegally shut down. So, one more thing. When James Comey, in July of this year, dismissed the criminal charges, or didn't charge Hillary Clinton with the crime, he said this, he said, and I'll never forget it because when he said this hit me hard. He said, the most valuable thing I have is my family and my reputation. And my family's back there, some of them. My friends are back there. And my reputation is in shatters because of what this respondent government has done to me. And I'll never get that back. So I just want to say again, categorically deny all these charges I heard when I was listening to counsel for the respondent. And I think you should be more careful with your words, because words do have meaning and they do have effect. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no